I want to express my deepest gratitude to you. Thank you so very much for everything you have done. Yes, friends, the beauty of our job here is not just that we are surrounded by old technology all day, but also that we get to meet many, many highly interesting people. And Gerald is such an example. He coordinated all the stuntmen and artists in the GDR who really had skills into an amazing show and had them perform at major events. Like, for example, at the Brandenburg Gate, where larders drove through burning walls, or BK motorcycles with huge ladders on them, where the artists climbed up during the ride, or small cars that the children had built. Gerald was right in the middle of all these events. We are thrilled that he has agreed to share some of his experiences from back then with us today. He also brought along some pictures and a few short films. I advise you to watch the film from beginning to end. I know that there are some amazing shots included, some of which have never been shown before. So today, exclusively here, we have Gerald, who had a huge artist management in the GDR and even performed for prominent figures like Erich Honecker. We wish you lots and lots of fun with this little film. The last of his kind? Yes, friends, but Gerald also has another moment. Of course, time is always really tight, because he is still active in management today. Let's quickly take another look at our wild pigeon's nest. Look how trusting she is. This is a comfort pigeon. And so I have here because it absolutely wanted to nest on the swallow nests, and the branches kept sliding down from the slope and falling down there. And now we have simply screwed on an old frying pan, and it was able to build its nest perfectly in it. And now she has been nesting in it for a few years. In this frying pan, the nest just needs to be cleared out, because they always build anew, wild as they are, wild pigeons, but it works quite well. So she is really very, very tame. Look how far I can go. She has absolutely no fear. A few times the crows raided the nest, and so she settled here under this eave. The crows can't find them. Now it's also a great opportunity for her to raise her young safely and well hidden. It's quite late for nesting, but I think she'll still manage to raise the young. So Gerald, you also brought us a few photos. We are already excited. Yes, it's all history.
We were once very big in the event industry, and in my life I have organized nearly 3,000 events, from discos to galas, but also served as the production manager for large events. And the highlight was I brought the stuntmen into our show. This is stunt work here, folks. You might remember Verkeers Kompass. There was something here once. And at DIFA, there were the stunt people. And they were two really top-notch guys. And one of them drove while the other lay down here in the front. The poster is really amazing. Yes, I made it. That was my idea.
What you have now, you can't really see. I usually get them like this.
We sold them at the events because everything cost a lot of money. And we also made guardrails for the Children's Festival. We used lava or sand for that. However, we didn't get any money from them. We just wanted it to look good.
It all looks a bit like the original, just like with the sponsors.
And that was the entire racetrack. The children were, of course, thrilled. That was my friend Uli Klein, who was the editor-in-chief at 1199, one of the best speakers, who unfortunately has passed away. And then I had Akim Kaps here. He was one of the TV clowns from Bumkreisel. So the kids were there, 2001, all sensational with makeup and everything. And up there in the Zarte bist du, right? That's me. Yes, that was me. Today I don't look as chic anymore. And then I did this with a company in Thuringia. With Plough they produced wooden toys for the GDR, for the entire Eastern Bloc. And with them, I developed these races, these kits.
These children here as well.
And then we had a race, modeled after a Formula One track. Since we were in the GDR, we had to do the East version. That's just how it was. And the success proved us right. So, in the year 50, we organized such a large event. And so I coordinated everything. And what we had in terms of stunt people, the motor acrobats from Cottbus, these stunt people, each had their own program. But then I had the Super Renner show, where they were all involved. I coordinated it, 2001. I had my own stage and then had a water crossing and tunnel. We built a tunnel where the children could drive through. So we went out of our way, needed a trailer, and with the truck we made the special tunnel spot out of cardboard. So completely crazy, but it was fun. And I really had enthusiasts. I then employed up to 45 people. And sometimes we held events in 3 villages simultaneously in one day. I prepared everything and then...
But who were the clients then? Because as a regular organizer, you couldn't handle something like that.
So we had all the folk festivals that existed in the GDR, all the villages, communities. At the Alex, it was usually when there was a big folk festival. Only the party is always right. The FDJ, who were the clients. And, yes, they always had to do something special. And what I put together here with my team was really something very special. It was unique.
So the politicians wanted to shine a bit with you, but actually it was also the defiance.
Yes, of course. There was a time when I was arrested and ended up in jail. Here's what happened. In 2001, we then had the GDR champion in karting. We had these small racing karts, and there were different classes. I also have some pictures later. And on your poster, you have the ER loader here, right? No, that was a 15er. You actually have that one. That wasn't mine. That belonged to the people at this stand, who also had motocross machines. They did all of that. I just bought them and integrated them into our big setup.
You then have an entire show out there.
And in 2001, the main attraction was always the race of the children who built their own soapbox cars. And then during the break, there were the stunt people. Then there were the motor acrobats from Cottbus and others. I'll show you that later. We pulled off the biggest number. We thought we were all going to be arrested. Pioneer meeting in Karl Marx City. That's where the big Karl Marx head was. There was a large honor tribune, and then there was the big celebration. On the VIP stand sat our chairman of the State Council, Comrade Erich Honecker. And everyone was excited. I thought, okay, what could happen? We've done this 100 times. And then the stunt people came here with the Lada. That was a different one. And the sensation, a Lada driving on 2 wheels. Oh, they built a small ramp for that. And then we took the tires from the multicar and inflated them to 7 or 8. And then it drove onto the ramp and actually drove on 2 wheels. He did a whole lap in the stadium on 2 wheels. The buddy in the passenger seat did a handstand out of the window. It always worked out. And then Eric was on the honorary platform. I still have an old issue of Neues Deutschland with a picture on the 2nd page. We didn't make it to the 1st page. And then he listens. We didn't make it on the 1st one. And there's a man lying on the roof in front of Erich Honecker's grandstand.
Oh shit.
So everyone held their breath. About, 30 Stasi agents came under the grandstand and set the thing back up. And our moderator then said, yes, excitement and so on. And the 2nd time it worked out, and they really accused me of having organized it on purpose, that because Eric was there, the thing was on the roof. Yes, 2001, which of course is not true. We were all scared. Can you imagine what was going on? So that was one highlight. And the 2nd highlight was when they arrested me at Alexanderplatz. It was on the 1st of May, the sun was shining, a big folk festival, and between the Congress Hall and where the Christmas market always was, the street was closed off. That's where I got to do the whole racetrack, and we put on the big show there. And a highlight was the GDR champion of go-karts. These small karts with MZ engines, they really went up to 160. And then we did a show like that, and there was a lot of setup. And in the curve, his brake disc broke, and he didn't make the turn, and briefly went into the audience. But nothing happened. It was really just a torn pair of tights and a few scrapes. But of course there was excitement, and since nothing happened, there was immediately an accident. And then they all came in droves. Me in my red jumpsuit. You are the boss here. Come with us. You are under arrest. And then I sat on Keibelstrasse for about 8 hours and had to explain what we were doing there. When I was released at 6 p.m., my buddies had already packed everything up and we could go home. 2001.
But that's how it was. They like to show off, but whoa, if something happened in a prison.
I was always the one who organized everything, and I don't make a hero out of it. We also earned a lot of money, but the other comrades, they got the Art Belker medal and received the awards, and I never appeared in the second row. The crazy one, yes, they did things. So you can imagine, Tino, we are talking about well over 1,000 major events, all the things that happened there. And you have to understand, they always blamed us for the lack of lawnmower wheels in the GDR because we always took all the lawnmower wheels from the bag for the troll. Exactly. That's it. Well, the children wanted to take them home afterwards. You can't just tell the children to watch out. And I did it for 10 years. It was a really great time. So we developed it, did it for the first time, I think in '82 at the Workers' Games in Magdeburg. There was still often somehow a gap. We had 25 stages, and then someone said, now we need something for children. And then I came up with the idea, and we really went for it. They were all great craftsmen. So I had plumbers, carpenters, basically all multi-skilled craftsmen, as it was in the GDR. They were all with me, and they all earned good money. Then a craftsman, or a helper, they got 100 East German marks per day, cash in hand. And if we worked here for 3 days, we had 300 marks by the weekend. That way, you could of course choose the best people. From the PGH, the plumber. Let's take Plenterwald for the 750th anniversary as an example. There were directors from the very top, and they came up with everything, and said, now we need an ice cream stand here. But an ice cream stand in GDR times also meant you had to have running water for the ice tongs. Yes, otherwise you can't maintain hygiene, and they will shut everything down. And I said, yes, we'll do it. No problem at all, as long as he pays for it.
So they expressed their idea and you were responsible for making sure everything was interpreted accordingly, so to speak.
Only for certain things. There were many others as well. I wasn't alone there, but I was responsible for specific things. There was action, and also where we had our own stages and sales stands, and they knew I had 20 people, if it came to that, and it worked like that. And then I called a buddy. He was with the plumbers, somewhere in Prenzlauer Berg. I said, hey, I need about 200 meters of water pipe, galvanized pipe. That didn't exist. But just like that. And then he said, can you pay? I need this and that. And then they brought 200 meters of galvanized water pipe. And then we had the pliers. But then the hygiene inspectors came, and they were sometimes strict, and said, where is the protocol that shows this pipe has been chlorinated? So I called again and said I need a protocol for chlorination, and signed. We never chlorinated it, and everything was okay. Yes. And if that had come out, we would have been in serious trouble. Everything was always good. A bit of adventure was always involved. Simply put, we were really good, and we were wholeheartedly involved. And let's not kid ourselves. In 2001, as a graduate engineer, you earned 500 to 600 marks. We laughed our way through it. So we had well over 1,000 people go home, and we still had some fun. But it was really hard work. And if you didn't take care of things, you earned nothing as a freelancer. But if you were really good, you earned a lot.
And as I said, that was very rare even in GDR times. Yes, it had a unique characteristic, yes. And when he was somewhere, it spread. And we also have to see that we get the Ren, yes, then known, then TV, and then each one individually was already good people. So they were
B, Cottbus. Those were the motor acrobats from Cottbus. Cottbus and motor acrobats, really fine buddies. They all had great jobs, and as a hobby, they sawed off the roof of a Moskvich here, and then had an old BK motorcycle, and it's the 350 BK here. Look, they modified it like this. From today's perspective, stunt people would be laughed at, but in GDR times we were something very, very special. That didn't exist, and it was also something that was sold or offered at the flea market, at every event. And then each of the artists brought their things, and then they bought them. And then we had a few more. When was that? Years ago, yes. And these were the stunt people. These are the Ladas with the firewall here. One of them then tipped over on Eric's roof. And these three were working as stunt people for DEFA. And wait a minute, that's Irwin. Yes, and he. Those were really great people who also worked in films for DEFA. And they were well-trained top people. There was also a series on GDR television called Verkeerskompass, and they were in it, or whatever it was called. It was in the West.
Oh, that was already in the West.
That's how displaced we were in time, yes?
That existed in the East.
Yes, that's right. A group, and they were really good.
They always had the company for that. The ones who handled it smoothly, so to speak. You know, they bought everything, all on their own account.
Yes, and he was once a GDR motocross champion or something like that. And then he just flew over 12 ladders with a ramp, and they took a photo of him flying right over them.
That was at that time.
They had their own show. I was just allowed to coordinate it once. We maybe did, I don't know, 20 events where everyone was together. That's also a logistics issue. You have to coordinate with them. How long does it take?
And everyone has a program.
Yes, and to make it all fit somewhere. And that was my task. So those were the motor acrobats again. He then made a nail board, went with the IS, sat his butt on the nails, and then went over it with idle speed. It just has to be like a turban. So just like a baby diaper has been tied out of it.
Yes. Those were also the ones from Coppice.
Here he is. He just took a chair and idled the engine, reading the newspaper up there, and then drove back and forth with the engine idling.
Is that also the one, the old one, or the 2.5? Or the 1?
No, I think he does. The old 2.5?
Yes, the 0 point.
Yes. And then he did everyone here again. It was a bit like clowning, but of course, everything was a bit funny.
It has to be.
Yes, mostly it was. Actually, we were the inventors. A folk festival for the family. There was really something for everyone, for the children.
A bit of thrill, a bit of adventure, and a bit of playfulness.
So that was the racetrack. That's how I set it up on the 1st of May. This here was the Christmas market, and here is the Congress Hall. So the street was always closed off, and I set up the whole number with a tunnel, with water, with an overpass, with tires. So they got all the old tires from Tire Services. I had the whole truck filled with tires. We then took them all for the curve, just like in car racing. Yes. So this is here with the BK motorcycles. The buddy also from Cottbus. Man, I've really never seen anything like this. If it really climbed all the way up, and it is, naturally, I don't know, 150, 200 meters on this racetrack.
That is no longer you today, but that would still be a number today.
Yes, those were really cool guys. But they only did it as a hobby. They were simply amazing. And I made sure that they got paid. As an artist or performer in the GDR, you had to have a license, a classification, and most of them didn't have that. I had that with the racing event. So we said, okay, let's do another race, get the paperwork, and then I'll give them the money. The overall result was crucial.
Yes, above all, they will gladly come back here next time.
Of course, there are also many jealous people. I have my own autograph photos. That was all. Then we have here from Sachsenring all the badges open and everything, and brought old ones from the West, I wanted to say.
You are on par with the Western racer.
I was just the, today you would say, manager. And then I also did the escape act here, but only as an organizer for Mark Wesley on the burning rope. I'll tell you about that another time. I also have videos of it. Then we had a sticker made. So I was the sticker king. I then got some blank foil and somehow diverted it from the FDJ. Then screen printers, and then you had a sticker. That was something, of course, if you had such a sticker. Then we also had graphic designers, and a very well-known graphic designer did it, in print. They gave that to me sometime later for the 750th anniversary celebration because everyone liked it. You couldn't have paid for it, a very well-known graphic artist, and then I got it as a gift on brittle paper. Of course, I was delighted about that.
Yes, and that is always initially sketched by hand or something like that.
Yusan made an embossing, and my initials here and that for Renault Races. And then could you do that? For me, just 3 pieces? I have them at home. Oh, I see. Just as a little souvenir. The man with the said came at some point and was naturally fascinated and delighted. This is a very well-known window. Yes. And our highlight was, of course, the half Trabant. a Trabant falls into two halves, so we assembled a Trabant from scrap parts. I had an acquaintance who had a Trabant workshop, and he actually did it like that, but also kind of crazy. And then I bought it from him, and at first he always drove, but later I drove myself, at the Red Town Hall, at the TV tower, and then we actually removed 2 support wheels from the hand truck. No, that was really just from G.
And then someone pulled and it flew apart.
No, we then had a hanging coupling at the back, yes, and it was a mechanism that was put together. Like that. And then 200 children held onto the rope. That's nice too. The hand car had a pull cord. When I pulled it, the mechanism disengaged, and then it fell apart. The rear part with the roof stayed behind. And I went through the Brandenburg Gate with the half that had the 2 big wheels. We were also in the evening show. And then it is in the evening. The joke during GDR times was that you waited 15 to 17 years for the Trabant. And now comes the crazy buddy from the race. He saws it in half. They didn't know that it was a junk car, a registration, 2001 just put together. And yes, that was the sensation from my friend. He was at 11:99 here on television. Uli Klein, one of the most gifted announcers, really such a reporter. He entertained the whole Alex. We also had our own sound system there, including recording with the Pullis, really big speakers. Yes, and then he has the sensation, the flagship of the GDR automobile industry, and how many children are holding on at the start. No one knew what had happened.
Also a nice idea.
And then how many children? And then they counted, sometimes 200-300 children. We had this really long rope, a really thick one, and then they all stood there and started placing bets. How will the kids manage it? The whole exciting middle part, of course. Our driver had tweaked it a bit. It had a bit more power, blah, blah, blah. So it always took a quarter of an hour. Then I started driving, put it in first gear, and with 200 children, you don't move an inch. Nothing works. And then the wheels briefly came loose. And then I pulled the lever and it unfolded. And then sometimes there were people standing in there. And wow, you also get videos of that. I always have everything on video.
We'll do another part. Today is just about the story, what you've already done here. And today we'll take a look at your photo album.
That was still my friend Mark Wessany. Then we have the escape from the burning rope. I was only allowed to do that a few times. He was one of the top artists and always did it alone. But I was sometimes able to take him along to this big super racing show. That was, of course, the absolute highlight.
Then we had a mobile disco, which was a garden tiller with a trailer and a generator. And then we had everything, speakers, amplifiers, and then one of the DJs would always drive around and play real music. It was really loud. Yes. So this was again how the children assembled these soapbox cars according to the construction manual. During the construction phase, I had my helpers. They all wore blue tops. Everything.
And they could do that right after the show or during the event or something like that.
Yes, that's how it started. We made jingles, organized soapbox car races, and proper announcements. And then the children could apply. They received start numbers. They were registered. Then there were age-appropriate guidelines if you had a driver's license. So a real racer, a driver's license with a stamp card. If someone really messed up, they got a stamp like the adults. I still have stamp cards there. Yes, sometimes there is also a wine stand. And I once organized the wine festival for the Rheingau residents at Alexanderplatz. And that was, of course, a sensation for anyone who had something like that. We also built all the drapery, and that was our highlight. So that was a mobile fairground container, which they had once built for Diwag, a master carpenter from Rostock, which I then bought and converted with the trailer of a mobile shipyard. So, it's a long story, and that was, of course, a highlight. Then you could sit for 2 days and have an overview of the entire festival grounds, also at the Brandenburg Gate. Here is the Trabant again, showing how it starts. We had some equipment, poles, a start and finish line, and the Trabant was there. Then we had the rope, and there were about 200 children holding on to it. So that was it. And then someone sat inside steering, properly with brakes and approved by the TÜV. Just take a look. Yes, then they did it up here at the Brandenburg Gate.
That was around 99. Looks like the Love Parade. So many people.
We were really there for the... Look here, the children. It was really, yes, wonderful under the arch, and behind it the Brandenburg Gate. The only racetrack. It was an old concrete mixer, a Scania, and a haulage contractor from somewhere in Bautzen. He was only allowed to drive on the Hungaroring for the race, because he wasn't allowed to drive in the West, like many others. And then I did the race with the race truck against the DDR champion in Kartuse, and yes, all as part of the pre-program for the children. So then we had the specialists. He lay down and then someone drove a motorcycle over his stomach. You have to do that first. Or that was actually the stamp card for the children. And whoever got 3 stamps was out. Racers, driver's license holders are exemplary road users. Then you have this little traffic garden. And yes, that was something special for the children. That was our water crossing. It was a water basin with pumps. And then they had to drive through it once, and the water bubbled up on the right and left. They wanted to have that for the 750th anniversary celebration. It cost a ton of money, and we spent the whole day setting it up with power generators and pumps.
And did you build that yourself, or did you have people for that? You also needed to have a concept first on how to implement it.
I once studied welding technology. I would actually be a welding engineer if they hadn't kicked me out for political reasons at the end. And then I worked in the metal workshop and of course had all the practical experience and everything. That's just how it was. That was the racetrack here, with Alexanderplatz behind us. And in front of us was the Congress Hall. Santa Claus was always here, and we always had it on May 1st. October 7th was always the start of the fairs in Berlin, and the end was on October 7th. The street was closed off, and then I was allowed to make everything colorful. Then we had these tables here where the children built things, and then we drove around this circle and also the stall holders. That was always the highlight. I still have a lot of videos, and with this whole fire show here, we did it once in front of the Red Town Hall. You can see the half Trabant. That's here again. And of course the #1 handball goal with stabilized feet. It was nailed together with rough boards, very lightly, and then it was thoroughly soaked with gasoline. And then Kuhl started from 50 meters. One person was lying on the front, of course, wearing an asbestos jacket and a crash helmet, because otherwise you can't do it. And here too, the boots with iron and everything were set on fire, and then there were really 15-meter high flames. So there were really times when they had 510 liters of gasoline. You can imagine what was going on.
And was there also, when you prepared these shoes or something like that, was there also some kind of public order office or someone who said beforehand, we need to see what you're doing, show us first or afterwards if it didn't work out? Because they were all so electrified.
No one even thought to ask if you were allowed to just do that.
Yes, just let them do it. Hopefully it goes well.
The BMX people had a course, and then they rode their BMX bikes on it. That was sometimes also a part of it. So everything that had rank and name in the GDR, with false things, I had access, and then you always had to see. It was also associated with travel costs. I couldn't now with their bicycles when we were in Rostock, then they had to be in Berlin. That was everything. Yes, like that. Here we have the Trabant again. This is just a nice photo at the TV tower. That's natural, of course they shouted. You will see the videos that recorded all of this when... People, yes. Then wait a minute. I need to take a sip of coffee first. Tino. That's your rooster. He also wants to break the stones.
This one is new. A visitor brought him along. He didn't want to slaughter him, and said, hey, maybe he fits in with your group here. So we let him run around a bit, and he's doing quite well.
That was the start again, and then there was someone with the flag, and then over the loudspeakers came the anthem, and it was really a great show. And then, of course, they were also waved off when they completed the lap during the award ceremony with the winner's podium and so on. And then, as the race director, I had an overall brought to me from the West. That was a work overall. And then everything we could get from Berlin and Sachsenring, like a few badges. So the girls would already take a look when I was there for a long time.
I can imagine that.
Nobody watches anymore.
So don't put on the station wagon, you have to put it on again. It doesn't fit there anymore.
Then we were at the Brandenburg Gate again, and we always had 4. We also had an age-appropriate rule, so for those who were a bit older, the age of the driver and the pusher were combined, and then there was a bit of a head start. So it was all fun. That was it. And then we had a curve that was quite enjoyable. Yes, just like in Formula 1 stuff. So this was my team. Then we had a nice farewell at the end. Everyone had white tracksuits for the preparation phase, blue overalls, all in screen print, runners, and 1,000. I was always allowed to wear the red suit. Someone had to be in charge. I was responsible for everything.
That was the whole crew that participated there. That was the crew, yes, nice.
Then we also had a stage here with brass music and so on. Of course, we had to cater to the family for the grandpas. Then there was also a beer garden. Then I had these stands. There was something, I don't know, potato pancakes. So the racetrack was set up. This is how it looked before it started. Yes. Then we had something special again. 1,000. Yes, here you can see the Trabant again, just like the children are. And when it falls apart, the front half drives with me at the wheel. Yes, sometimes the car wouldn't start. Then we said you have to talk for another 15 minutes, because the spark plug is out. And why? Well, something was always mine. It was assembled from scrap parts. It wasn't a new Trabant. No trick.
Looked over it again, just attack.
There we have the advertisement. Here you see how I cheekily look out. Again. Then once, in Hellersdorf, it was the Harvest Festival, and I received a great award for high readiness and excellent performance in the preparation and execution of the Hellersdorf Harvest Festival. In 1989, Gerald was given thanks and recognition by the district mayor, but at least it's like the front page of the newspaper on such a number. I had a pile of them. They were then filed away at home. The directors, they all got, I don't know, sometimes an Abdebeka medal or other awards, also money. I was happy when I had my travel expense report and my money, and then said thank you and see you next time. And that was a nice thing. This is our Scania again. That was already a sensation. So when it ran up, like a semi-trailer, and this buddy stood on the semi-trailer, then he came. It was an honor for him. He didn't want any money. He said, if I can participate and drive around at Alexanderplatz, that was the greatest for him. He didn't have a license. What about the year of manufacture or right? I still have all that.
That's right. It's on the hunger.
You went over 200. So it wasn't just any fun car. The problem was unloading. There was a ramp at the East Station, and then it had to go from the East Station to Alexanderplatz, but it didn't have a license. The police were responsible. I said you have to accompany it with a patrol car because it doesn't have a license. Is that possible? I said if you drive ahead with the blue lights, that's something for the kids.
And how he comes?
Yes, well, 2001, don't ask me what would have happened if something had happened. Yes, this is here again. This is our container again when we place it on the ground. We made a small cafe there.
Yes. So were all these booths that you put up there within a week? Or what?
Almost like showmen. From May to October, we only did outdoor events as a seasonal business. Open air events. That's how the connection was, of course. When it rained, you had to cover everything with tarps. That was it. But the good thing was, if the client was the city or the FDJ or something, you still got the money even if it rained. Yes. So financially, it was always a great thing. Still grateful today. And all the people I had, they remember it very fondly.
And did you always store everything temporarily? Or did you go straight to the next event location?
I cluttered up my property just like you. I had even less space. And we had a large barn from a carpentry shop north of Berlin. And we stored everything there and took it out as needed. So they already knew if there was something somewhere, sound system or stages or technology, or someone needed stickers. Then they called me, or yes, had a real hub. It was a full-time job. When you have an event on the weekend, you had to prepare everything. You had to paint everything. So, then we once had an event at the Brandenburg Gate. That was a crappy number. It took place, and this runner was steered, and in the joint there was a carriage bolt with a wing nut. So, and now my buddy, the driver, left the crate north of Berlin. We had set everything up and he had this screw for the steering. Then we had one with a police car. He drove out with the blue lights, got the crate, and we had the bridge. Then they first sent some clowns over the racetrack area. Today we can talk about it, but back then people were standing there. So we always had people. It was crazy. Or then I had here. This was another sensation. Ingo Chudoba, he had giant snakes. He was a snake charmer and magician. Yes, and then the children could hang the snake around their necks. He had several snakes. Yes. And suddenly, on Alexanderplatz, the children ran away with the snake. Then we were at Alexanderplatz. You can imagine people and children running around Alexanderplatz with a constrictor snake.
So pure adventure, so to speak. Afterwards, 1 or 2 cues.
The snake wasn't mean, it was probably more scared, but of course people didn't know that.
There was quite an alarm, and 1 or 2 snakes were missing from the container.
No, it just started. Achim Kapp's here. He was Bumkreisel. That was his children's show, and he was the TV clown from children's television. And of course the children knew him. He was always there. Yes, these are all memories. I need to sort them all out, and then I still have videos. And so on. This is my friend Uli Klein, who unfortunately passed away. He was an editor-in-chief at 1199, and he was the kind of person you would have to shoot to make him stop. If you said, Uli, make an announcement now, then he would talk, and he could do it. He was a stadium announcer, so a genius, really.
Well, then you have a pony buddy here, like a carriage. They all came. Word had gotten around, and for them, it was simply a sensation. He then put his advertisement on it. Okay, if it's Pentecost, you can call him. And then he also got a few marks. And it was simple. Everything ran smoothly. And I never asked, do you have a permit? Do you not have a permit? We just did it. I took responsibility for everything, and was handsomely rewarded.
You even traveled internationally.
That was also during the Berlin days in Moscow. Then we loaded all the stuff onto the wagon and took everything to Moscow in the Olympic Stadium. And then, of course, we had Russian in school, and Uli Klein, or whoever it was, did the moderation in Russian. We then managed to get a Russian moderator aside at the Olympic Stadium, and then we did it there. We didn't do much. Madness. Madness. Yes, those are, of course, beautiful things. You can believe me, I wanted to say.
That's how it is.
And then came the reunification. And the question was, how can I make the most money in the smallest space? Who sells the sausages? Who sells Coca-Cola? We don't have to do that anymore. 2001. Then everyone came from the West. GDR culture went down the drain. And then I packed everything up. I still have the Renault today, and just want to pass it on to a successor, someone who appreciates it and truly does it from the heart. If only I could do it again.
Yes, that's why. It was important to me too. You know, we got to know each other through the motorcycle scene and shared stories. And I think it's simply important to preserve such things for future generations because it is also East German history and cultural heritage. Yes, what you did. And as I said, it was really unique. I never saw anything like that in my youth. You actually only knew that from pictures and from the series called Zibo. You didn't know such a thing, but certainly not in the East.
Then you know Mr. Mücke. Mücke said something. Mücke was the GDR champion Moonstone, who now owns this racing stable. Yes, with Schumacher's son or whoever else is there. And he always had really hot cars. And he had a Zastava with papers. Fiat 128. No, Fiat 128 Special, which was identical to the Zastava with papers. Looked like a normal Zastava, which existed in the GDR times in red, a bit rusty, but with a souped-up engine. This car went 190, and I was allowed to buy it from him. So, and then I drove with the Zerskaber when we were on the highway to the event. Then an ER loader came. They thought they were the greatest, 160, 165, and then it was usually the end for the loader. Some might have had 170, and then I did it. I stepped on the gas,
and then it really went up to 190 again. It may seem like nonsense from today's perspective, but it was a lot of fun, and that's how it should be at that age, in the time of storm and stress. We had many envious people. We also rubbed some the wrong way. And of course we had long hair, as was fitting for that time in Europe, but you also earned it.
You once earned the money, and it was legitimate the way you did it. That was all okay, and it was part of it. It's no different with rock stars today. You have to let the feathers fly a bit.
Basically, I started in the 70s in rock music as a sound technician and then moved on to doing disco. But that's a long story. And this event thing, I started it around 82 or 83 and continued it until the reunification. And we really did some big things. We organized events for the LPG with dance performances, rock music, and pop songs, like a variety show, when the LPG celebrated and the GDR was the country, where the most celebrations took place in the world. There were events every day. Yes, and we traveled from Thuringia to Capacona.
I knew every cultural director, every mayor, and we went down there, and it's so interesting that so much was celebrated there, and that people stuck together so well. You can ask wherever you want. That was here in the village at the folk festivals when they came here from the FRG back then and said, wow, you can still celebrate, and we don't know anything like this at all. Yes, the people also came closer together through this economy of scarcity because one person supported another and everyone helped each other, and that's how it grew over the many years.
Then came the reunification. Everyone met their vessel, and they all scattered. But there are still many people who stick together, and that's why I'm happy that we can talk about it here, and that we are the same, and we used to help each other. There was everything. You just had to know when and where and had to know the right people. That was it, simply. There was then the cruel joke that the death penalty was abolished in the GDR, so that was no joke. It really existed until the years. And then they asked, yes, and what happened then? And I said, there was a new punishment for that, and the new punishment for the death penalty was living 2 years without a relationship. Today we can tell the story. Back then.
Yes, it was fun. But today, how old were you at the reunification? I forgot. But already 1 or 2 weekends older than me. If you do that, I was able to experience both systems, let's say 21. And how do you see it today if you take an honest look over the long period and say, one system, the other system, and let it all pass in review a bit?
So everything has its advantages and disadvantages. I wouldn't want to miss it. I also don't want the GDR back, because in the culture, it was always about getting into a band, maybe traveling to the West, and that was only granted to very few.
Yes, maybe they should have done everything a bit more relaxed. Yes, and then it surely would have continued a bit longer, I always think. Yes, that was this oppression, I would say, in a way that it was always a bit difficult. As a teenager, you just accepted it and said, well, until then you could still go to Hungary and Bulgaria, and that was fine. Yes, but I would say the GDR or this system could perhaps have been reformed with 3 or 4 things. Yes, but here it is very difficult.
At the moment, the most important thing is that peace remains.
Yes, and it looks really bad there too.
Health. That you do something for your health. And if you still have 2 or 3 friends from the past, then you are way ahead. And friendship must be maintained. You also have to help people who cannot help themselves.
Actually, it's enough if you have 4 or 5 people around you with whom you can do something charitable.
For 25 years, we have had an association here in the Hearts called the Second Chance EV. It is a non-profit organization, and this association helps entrepreneurs who have innocently fallen into distress.
So this is also very interesting. As an example,
we helped the victims in Nachtofstedt who lost their houses in the landslide to receive a reasonable compensation. You have to imagine, there's a landslide, then they are standing in slippers and in their sleepwear on the street and are never allowed to go back into their house. And then people from the government come again and say, you didn't make 200 jars, the ones in the basement. That's what the appraiser said. I helped them out. We then made a film with Peter Escher, which I can show you sometime, and we made sure they were properly compensated.
As an entrepreneur, one always has to consume their stamp collection, and we do everything on a voluntary basis.
And there, when there is injustice, we are on the scene. I've become a bit calmer now, but we have already done a few things.
And I always find it sad that today people have to be found who will then have to push it forward voluntarily and with money. Yes, 2001. Why are such people who have taken risks and invested their private assets to employ people in this country and start a business not supported in such a situation? Everyone else is taken care of, and the people who had a business somewhere and then went bankrupt due to some stupid things or where things went downhill, they can first go through their stamps to see if there's an interesting one, and they have to sell those first.
2001. You can't get any money with 11 marks today.
2001. But that's how it is. First, I check if there's anything left that needs to be eaten before I might get to enjoy any kind of support.
The nice thing is that people who are capable always find each other again and often stick together. And there I can tell everyone, okay, stick together and do something sensible and keep learning every day. Even at my age, I still do 2 hours of continuing education every day, all the digitalization, and I could give you 100 examples now.
Yes, I just talked to Gerald a little while ago. We were standing by his car, and he had these little models in the back and everything. And he also told me about all the things he still plans to do in his life now, and that he sometimes thinks it's crazy where all the wild ideas that still swirl around in his head come from, but that's what makes life.
You need to have ideas, and I really have a lot of ideas. I also help young people with starting businesses and so on, because I have a lot of experience. Well, I have been self-employed my whole life, coming from an entrepreneurial family. We have been master craftsmen for 250 years. So, and either others don't need to make the same mistakes. Yes, if you can help there, but most people think they know everything better. Now come the influencers who say, okay, I say, what do you do? I am an influencer. I say, what do you do if they turn off the internet? I only have a time travel machine at home. They can't laugh at that. Yes, you have to make it a bit fun and not patronize and just help sometimes without always looking for a commission or money. And it also makes me happy to be here, to see what you have done here. So hats off, Tilo, really.
Yes, you know how to assess that now. A regular visitor might not see it that way. But someone who has done something like this themselves and has taken on such a risk knows what has ultimately been accomplished here over the last 20 years.
That's what the work looks like. When I clear out my property, which will probably be this year, I'll bring you a few more things. I can't throw anything away either. After all, these are all things for one, the junk.
But our story, it's all a story. That's exactly how it is.
I still have a meat grinder from my grandpa, which he used before the war, to grind the meat when he made sausages. There are memories attached to it. And then I still have the chopping block from the 1950s from my grandpa's butcher shop, which I have now restored. It's next to the grill. When I throw a steak on the grill, I know it's Grandpa's table. Yes, and everyone has to decide for themselves what they do.
Yes, but it was also passed down to us by our ancestors that everything should be kept in order. And when you no longer need it and it stands there only as a memory, and you think of the person or the family at that moment, someday everything comes to an end, and then you have to try to pass it on to the right hands.
And you also have to make sure that you preserve this for the next generation, because this is cultural heritage. This is something special. You can be proud of it.
Gerald, we thank you for your time and for opening up to us today. I know we had to convince you a bit beforehand, but I think it was really a nice thing that you showed us all these things, which you haven't shown to anyone else before. We are delighted. And as I said, I think this is absolutely a legacy from the GDR era that must be carried on and preserved for future generations, showing that there were such crazy people who also, let's bring a runner along, and then we can see what kind of events you always have planned here.
Let's keep brainstorming together and do something crazy.
That's how we'll do it. Thank you for now and all the best.